Hi, my name's Bonny and I'm one of the staff lawyers in the residential property team at Humphreys and Co Solicitors. I'm here to give you a brief overview on property searches. So today we'll be covering what are property searches, when do they need to be submitted, and how long do they take? Why are they important? A brief explanation of the searches, what happens if the results are not as expected, and some final points and tips. So there are over 150 search products available from companies such as the Coal Authority, Land Registry, local authorities, and water companies. A majority of the standard information can be condensed down into what conveyancers call standard property searches. So namely, these are the local search, water and drainage search, and environmental search. There are also additional searches that can be submitted, which will depend on the outcome of your standard searches and also the nature and location of the property. So these can include matters such as chancel repair, mining, telecommunications, transport, and utilities. From experience, we know that Devon and Cornwall had a lot of tin and clay mining, so we would look to do tin and clay mining search. In Bristol was a lot of coal mining, so a coal mining search. And in London, we know that there's the underground and a lot of projects, energy projects going on, so we would look to do an energy, HS2 and Crossrail search. So when are the searches submitted? So you've instructed your solicitors, you've done all the necessary initial paperwork, they've investigated the title. They will then be submitting inquiries to the solicitors and also be looking to submit the searches at that point. The approximate timescale for searches, so the planning and environmental is instantaneous. So once you've submitted them, they're typically here within a couple of minutes. The water and drainage slightly longer, so typically around 10 working days. The local search generally takes the longest amount of time. So at Humphreys and Co Solicitors, we would do something called a personal local search, and that is dependent on the capacity of the relevant local authority. So for example, Southwark is currently 2.5-week turnaround time for a personal local search, and Islington is 4 weeks. Why are searches important? So before you enter into a legally binding agreement, you obviously want to know whether there's any rights that will restrict your intended use of the property, or if it will involve you in any extra expenditures. If you've got a lender, they'll also be wanting to protect their own interest. So a majority, if not all of the lenders, would have a requirement for these searches to be carried out. If any issues are brought to light by the search results, then your solicitors will have the opportunity to request further information or action to be taken by the sellers, whether it's to be physically correcting the issue or providing financial assistance. A seller's disclosure is limited, so they will need to disclose defects in the title, but nothing further. So it would be up to your solicitors to investigate any other matters relating to the property. So the first standard search that I'll discuss is the local search. So as you can see, it is split into two sections, which is the local land charges register and inquiries of the local authority. So local land charges are important to be aware of, as any charges on that register do affect what that are affecting the property, will bind the owner and subsequent owners. The local authority are bound by statute to keep a register of certain matters, such as financial charges made by the local authority for developing roads, certain compulsory purchase orders, tree preservation orders, various planning entries, entries relating to conservation areas, and the listing of buildings as being of special architectural or historical interest. And in urban areas, they will also reveal any smoke control orders, which are basically put in place to ban the use of any non-smokeless fuels. With the inquiries of the local authority, again, you'll see that it's been split into two sections, which is the standard inquiries and the optional inquiries. So the standard inquiries are made to discover matters which are not registrable on the local land charges register, but still affect the property. So examples of these inquiries include, are the roads abutting the property adopted by the local authority? Are there any proposals for highways within the vicinity of the property? Any notices or proceedings in respect of various legislation? Whether or not there are planning controls or applications affecting the property, and if the property is in a smokeless zone. With the optional inquiries, these replies, so the replies to these optional inquiries don't come automatically with the local land charges register and standard inquiry replies. And they will, so the optional inquiry replies do need to be requested and are carried out independent of any of the standard inquiries. This is largely because they're not always necessary and are really only there for specific issues. So for example, if the property is in an enterprise zone or is crossed by a public footpath, or if any land abutting the property is registered as a common land or a town or village green. The next standard search is the environmental search. So this search gives details of past uses of the land on which the property is situated, as well as the areas surrounding that land, and whether or not these uses are likely to have caused any potential contamination. This is really important because if the land is found to be contaminated, then this could potentially endanger the property. Local authorities may also look to you as the owner to pay for any remedial works that are needed, such as replacing the topsoil of the land. This search also confirms whether or not the property is considered to be within a floodplain. So obviously it's important to establish whether or not the property is at risk of flooding. This might have, an adverse impact on indemnity insurances, insurance premiums, mortgageability, and property value. This search also highlights whether or not there are proposals for various projects such as transport. So for example, a property, especially in London, may be affected by new railway infrastructures such as the HS2 and Crossrail. An environmental search would indicate whether or not the property was within the proximity of any intended routes, or if they might be affected by any existing or proposed rail and highway transport schemes. This search would basically help owners assess risks such as compulsory purchase orders for properties close to the rail construction and other factors such as potential noise pollution. The final standard search I'll discuss is the water and drainage search. So water companies took over responsibility for most of the private sewers and drains in October 2011. So the ones that have been taken on are now known as mains, sewage and water pipes or drain pipes. The idea is to relieve landowners from having to pay for repairs and costs and to prevent disputes between neighbours sharing the responsibility for cleaning and replacing or maintaining facilities. Some pipes and drains have been excluded as becoming mains for various reasons. For example, any part of a drain or pipe that only serves their own property or is located within the boundary of the property are excluded. And also systems that drain to private facilities such as septic tanks are also excluded. So this search basically just shows whether or not the property is connected to the mains and if there are any private drains or pipes connected to the property that you should be aware of, as it's likely that you'll be responsible for them once you're the owner of that property. So what happens if you get a search back, it's got great results and there's nothing further to be said about them? So luckily for you, you'll be able to go onto the all-important exchanging of contracts, which will make your purchase a legally binding transaction and another important step closer to owning your own home. So what will happen if your search results are not as you expected? So please do remember that your solicitors are there to provide you with any legal advice necessary to enable you to make an informed decision. A good solicitor's aim should be to give the buyer a peace of mind, not just as a buyer, but also as a borrower, owner, and a future seller. There are a number of ways to proceed if the results are not as expected. So the most common is obtaining further searches when necessary, asking the seller's solicitors to clarify the results, and also getting the seller's knowledge and experience of the issue at hand. There is also an option of indemnity insurance for a number of issues which can't be remedied due to physical or financial aspects, or even timing. So some final points to leave you with. So it's important to look at the exact location and property address when deciding which searches will need to be made, so that the information provided in that search is as accurate and relevant to the property as possible. There is also an expiry date of approximately 6 months for search information, depending on the requirements of your lender. And so your solicitors should keep this in mind to make sure you're adequately protected. Finally, if you're only going to take one thing away from this presentation today, then let it be this. You should not, and your solicitors should also not advise you to exchange contracts until the search results are back. If any further searches are required based on these standard search results, then wait for them to come back as well. Your solicitors should report to you on these results. They're also obliged to report to your lender about anything unusual or onerous that has been highlighted in these searches. And then your lender will then have to give you the okay to proceed. So that's it. To recap, my name is Bonny Mo, and you're welcome to contact me by email at lawyers@humphreys.co.uk or by telephone at 0207 183 8840. If you need a legal cost quotation, whether it's for buying, selling, remortgaging, do let me know if you have any queries on this topic, and I will do my best to answer it. Thank you for listening, and we wish you all the best for your home buying. Thanks. Bye.